Alright, so today I'm with the Motherload, who is an Arena FPS journalist. So he is the one who hosts In the Key podcast series, where he interviews and talks with people from the Arena FPS community, such as professional players, content creators, commentators, and even developers. So today he's here with me and we're going to talk about all that good stuff. So how are you doing, man?
I have a cold, so I'm gonna sniffle and probably like have to fall over out of my chair coughing at some. But I'm gonna keep it together. Got some tea and honey, so it'll be fine. We'll
All
make
right,
it work.
perfect. I'm glad to hear that. All
Yeah.
right, man. So you watched some of my episode because last week he got to interview me, which was the first time I was interviewed. So, and you can go and check it out on his channel. It was really fun interview. And so now I am the one interviewing him. And so we got to watch some of my interviews, and you know that I always start with the same question, which is, where does your username come from? So what's the
I
story
knew you were
behind
gonna.
this name, the Motherload?
I, I knew you'd ask this.
Of
So,
course.
I encourage everyone here to go look up on YouTube. Just push in the Motherload, and you're gonna get a really cool music video by a band called Mastodon, and they're like a heavy metal band. But the video is like this really trippy video where like there are all these strippers twerking on, but it's also like medievalish with like some weird occulty stuff going on. I don't know why. I just like the song, but the music video is pretty hilarious. And because they're my favorite band, I was just like, I like that name. I'm going to use that as a name. And then it kind of became sort of a meme, especially amongst my Discord, because everybody calls me mom. They're like, "Hey, mom," or like, "Oh shit!" Like if there's like a fight breaking out or something, or people are arguing, mom's gonna come fix the problem. For Mother's Day, everybody's like, "Happy Mother's Day, Motherload." I'm like, dude, just get out of here, dude. Come on. But yeah, it's really not any more complicated than that. I just took it from my favorite band, that
Mhm.
song.
Interesting. So tell me,
Yeah.
so you're, I guess, mentioning a bit. I'm not sure when you're talking about the fights. Were you maybe talking about the Discord? Because you're on a Discord, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Deep.
So tell me, how did you get to that spot? Because basically, if I had to present you to people who would not know who you are, I would say that you're like
Most people.
the. I don't think so. I would say that you're like the ambassador of Arena FPS because you make content that really reaches out to pretty much everything that has to do with Arena FPSs, from old games such as the original Dooms, Quake, to modern games such as Dusk, Open Arena, even upcoming games like Master Arena. You get to talk about all of that. And so, how did you get to that point? How basically, what got you into Arena FPSs? I would say first of all.
Okay. So I got into Arena FPS. I had to get like backtrack because I've had this question asked to me multiple times. The first arena shooter I ever played was Duke Nukem Time to Kill on the PlayStation 2 with my dad. But that's not a first person shooter. But it is Duke Nukem. It is an arena type thing. If you play the multiplayer version, deathmatch, Duke match, whatever you want to call it. So that's always kind of been there. And then in high school, I played Quake 3 in computer class because teacher was she didn't care what we did, so we would just play Quake 3 every day, and that really left a mark on me. Like I really liked Quake 3, but I didn't understand it at the time. I got my ass kicked. Some guy in the class, his user handle was Skittle Dick. He wrecked all of us every day, and we never even figured out who in the class it was. Like I guess he was like sitting in the back somewhere, silently laughing. But I kind of carried that with me for a while, and then I didn't really touch computers until I was 20 years old, 21, and I was actually given a gaming PC by a friend, and I was like looking for games to play, and I'm like, oh, I remember playing that Quake 3 game, so I started playing Quake 3 a little bit again, just with like close friends, and I went a little further into it. I started kind of like looking up strategies and watching old QuakeCon videos, all the pros, Fatality, these guys. I don't know. I started seeing ads for this new game called Quake Champions, and I'm like, huh. Well, I guess I better try this out. I know I like Quake 3. Maybe I could get into Quake Champions. So I got it because it was free to play. I actually ended up paying the $20 for the character pack. It was cool. And I went deep diving into Quake Champions. I got involved with State of Quake, and Slip really kind of taught me how to play Quake effectively. Also, Frothy Omen. I don't know. I think you've had him on the show before, right? Okay, so Frothy's videos taught a whole generation of people how to play Quake, and I don't know that really goes appreciated because he made some excellent tutorials, like how to strafe jump, how to properly use each champion. All that was a big help. So yeah, I got really heavily involved in Quake Champions and played a little bit competitively. Like I was never very good, and I'm probably never going to be very good, but I played in King of the Hills and some tournaments and that. I played a lot of 2v2s when I first started out, but my partner quit on me, so I'm just a dueler now. And that kind of sparked my interest in arena shooters completely. Like I started the Keep Discord with Spaced and I Kill Pigeons and a few other people that were really heavily involved in our little community, and it started growing and growing. And what kind of occurred to me was that Quake Champions isn't going to last forever. And I also just kind of liked a lot of other games that were similar. I liked arena shooters, but it really hit me that Quake Champions isn't going to be something that lasts forever. Whereas these other games like Doom, Quake World, Quake 3, Quake Live have had a 20-year longevity. And there are all these new games coming out like Dusk and Master Arena, things like that. And I'm like, dude, I gotta get into this. I gotta try this out and show some support because a lot of people are looking for alternatives to Quake Champions because they're frustrated with it. And it just grew from there. I was just like, well, let's just showcase all the games that we like. Warfork has been tremendous over the past couple of weeks since it came out on Steam. We tried Warcell before it was Warfork, and unfortunately the community was kind of dead. And that's a big selection process. There is what games are worth supporting and what games aren't worth supporting. And just because it's a really good game doesn't mean it has the community to support it. So the Keep kind of became like, I'd like to describe it as Switzerland, because a lot of these games, their communities are at odds with each other. Or like Doom players don't like Quake players don't like Doom play, whatever. And I'm like, no, the Keep is Switzerland. Everybody's welcome. If you start talking trash in here, we're going to kick you. So I don't know. It's just fun to me. Like this whole thing is fun. Also, the most important thing is that the drowned god Cathala forces me to do this against my will. So I don't even like arena shooters, but I have like a big like Lovecraftian tentacle around my neck choking me every time I say that. So I love arena shooters, and I'm going to continue to do this.
Awesome. So regarding what you were saying, the drowned gods, the other gods, and all that theme, there's really something that you try, from what I've seen, to have inside your videos, inside your podcast. Like with the music that you put, with the awesome visuals, and all that. You really try to have an identity to your podcast. Which, like for example, if I compare it to my show, to Beyond Strafe Jumping, that is not something I do. I have like much more of a journalistic approach, like much more classical, I guess you would say, and just like questions. Whereas like you is more of a talk show with like all that theme as I was referring to. And so how do you see that? Was it something that you always imagined? You always wanted to have like something with a theme, or was it something that came along with time throughout the episodes?
Okay, so the drowned god thing was established well before the podcast was ever even thought. It just kind of became well, we have like a Discord, we have a group of people, we're gonna have like a clan. We had clan wars against other Quake Champions Discords, early on, and we just wanted to have an identity. So we're like, well, we need like a mascot. We didn't want to be. Everybody's like, there's a lot of them. There's US Quake Community, Quake Crew, State of Quake, and I'm like, well, what? Like, we don't own the name Quake. We could lose Quake at any point, and we don't only play Quake. So like, why would we call it? I don't know, the Quake group or whatever the hell. Let's just call it something completely original. So we came up with Cathala's Keep. We were trying to decide what the mascot should be, and I was like, well, there's so much content just in Quake, and especially in Quake Champions. It's like one really cool thing about the game, if you're into lore and stuff like that, is that it does exist in Quake Champions, and it's kind of explicit. So you have the different maps that have the different Azathoth, and I've always been into Lovecraft, so it's like, and the original Quake is very much about Lovecraft. So I thought it'd be really interesting let's just pick one of these elder gods and have that be like we're a cult who lives under a drowned or the drowned god. In this case, we picked Cthulhu because I'm like, well, Cthulhu, everybody knows that Cthulhu mythologically is the spawn of Cthulhu. She's already involved in Quake, so let's just roll with that. And our graphic designer whipped up the little octopus looking logo, and we rolled from there. And by the time I started the podcast, I was like, well, let's kind of have like an inventive character. And actually, I want to say that I got a little bit of this from Civi, and that he, if you ever watch his videos, he's a great FPS journalist. I don't know what you would call him. He just reviews FPS games and does a very good job of it. But in his videos, it's kind of like his character Civi is kind of locked up in this room, and he's not allowed to leave until he does what he's supposed to do. And I was like, oh, I like the idea of that. Like I'm held here, and I'm compelled to cover these games and support this community, even if I don't want to. So even if it gets hard, and that gives me motivation. It's like, even if it gets really hard to do this, like if I get home from a 12-hour shift at work and I don't want to edit sound, I don't want to do the sound audio, I don't want to edit like this freaking podcast and put it out. Like I feel like I have a responsibility to not only myself, but to everybody who's part of this community to try to support them as much as I can. So it's just, I don't know. It's really silly and complicated, but it's fun.
Yeah, cool. So I've got another question. So you talked a bit about it. You talked a bit about Civ and Unkind, and yeah, you got the State of Quake T-shirt. And so, from what I understood, originally this started as a second show, right, for State of Quake, and then you started making it into your own thing, right?
Yeah. So I think the first 5 or 6 episodes, if you go to the State of Quake's feed in whatever podcast app that you use, you'll find like the first 5 or 6 episodes of our show in that feed. It started off because Slip and Unkind were doing a great job with the State of Quake podcast. And I was like, I really want to do a podcast. And I had been begging them because they kind of had a trend of like the first several episodes of their show were just them talking. Maybe D-Ron would come in, and they were doing like an actual like kind of talk show analysis of like, this is the latest patch for for Quake, and these are the things that we're looking forward to. These are the things that are issues. Here's the news from the community. And Sync Era said this on Twitter, and maybe that means that. And that was fun. And then they started having guests. I think they only really had 2. They had Plague TV, who was amazing, and then they had Jahar. And Jahar, like that episode blew up. It became enormous. And then they stopped doing episodes. They didn't do anything after that. So I reached out to Slip, and I'm like, hey, man, I really want to support you guys. I want to do anything I can. And the thing is that people don't know this. Slip and Unkind live in 2 different areas of the country, so it's kind of hard for them to get together and actually record and also coordinate a guest and everything. And they're kind of unwilling to do it, without each other. So I was like, hey, if you guys are trying to get an episode out, but you don't have time to do it, or you have an off week or whatever, like I'll do these interviews and just release them, as like State of Quake presents this, and at least your listeners will get some content. And by the time I did that 5 times, and I realized like, maybe they're not gonna continue to do their podcast, or they're gonna take a long hiatus, I just kind of wanted to do my own thing. I was like, you know what? I think this show's got some traction. I started seeing the numbers come back from it, and I'd really like for to have complete control over it, and and not ask Unkind, because Unkind was doing all the editing and putting everything together, and it really made me feel guilty. It was like, I could do that. I could learn how to do Audacity and put a podcast together. So I just talked to him a bit, and he was like totally in support of it. He's like, yeah, dude, go ahead. And gave me all the previous episodes. I put them on Buzzsprout, uploaded them, YouTube, everything. And it kind of snowballed from there, and it's grown consistently ever since.
All right. So tell me a bit about your process of creation. I mean, your process of creating those content. First of all, so the big question is, how would you decide on who you will interview and the person that you'll have on your episode?
That varies. So, number one thing is I'm not seeking famous people so that my videos will get clicked on at all. I don't care about that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely want to talk to some people who are famous in our community, but that's not my motivation. The motivation is not to just like blow up and everything. the motivation is to talk to really interesting people. We talked about that a bit in my podcast with you, is how you're like, I don't do this for the number of people who listen to it. I do it for myself, because these are people I want to talk to. And I would say the same, except that I'll also try to consider what does my audience want to hear. And that's a double-edged sword, because I'm not going to do something just because some people say, like, oh, I really want to hear you talk to X, Y, or Z. Like, for instance, the reason why I haven't asked Jahar to be on the show is because, like, he's already been on State of Quake. He's already been on QuakeCast. Like, I'm going to give that dude some time, and then I'll talk to him about something that he hasn't already said the exact same thing to 2 different podcasts in a row. So I actually have a hit list of, like, everybody that I want to get on the show, and eventually I'll knock that. I'm crossing your name off as we speak. and you've been on there for a long time, man. Like, for real. I put a list together of, like, these are some really interesting people that I want to get to chat with. So sometimes it's just going through that list and seeing who's willing to take me up on the offer. Sometimes it's for instance, Flambeau. I was just sitting there one day, I was like, man, I ain't got no guests for this week. I got to have one out by Tuesday. What am I going to do? And I hit up my friend Nationwide Moose, and I'm like, hey, dude, let's do a Doom episode. You know anybody good that I should talk to? And he's like, you should talk to this guy, Flambeau. And I'm going to tell his story. I'll tell you exactly why I reached out to this guy. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Flambeau, aside from being a really good friend of mine, is a badass in Z-Daemon. He's a Doom player, and he sets up servers and does a lot of administration. He worked on Sigil a little bit, like making the multiplayer reports for Sigil work. And so the story that was told to me is like, hey, this guy Flambeau, one night we were playing Thursday Night Survival is a really big Doom event they do in Z-Daemon. And he said he had to get up and go walk his dog. But he was so drunk that he actually walked around the block with just his leash and no dog. And then came back and told everybody, he's like, guys, I know I said I was going to walk my dog, but I just walked around the block with nothing but a leash. And I was like, this sounds like a guy that I'm going to get along with. So I just messaged him that day. I'm like, hey, man, you ever heard of this show? And he's like, I'm a listener. I'm like, well, now you're a guest. Let's get on here. And then within, 3 hours, we'd recorded one of my favorite podcasts that we've ever. And we've been friends ever since. It can happen organically like that. And I had nothing prepared, man. I didn't know anything about this guy. I just knew that I have people that I trust, and if they say somebody's cool, then they're cool. And Flambeau has been an amazing asset. He actually, if you go on Z-Daemon and see, like, the key BYOB servers, those are his. And he's helped our community out tremendously. Big props to him.
Awesome. So, outside of Flambeau, who else really stands out when you think of all the person that you got to talk with, all the person that you interviewed?
They're all special to me. They're all my children. Kidding. Big props out to Locktar. Like, he was one of my favorite guests of all time. It's not because I'm picking him above other people. It's just because it was a big deal to me that he responded. So I remember telling you before, because you were like, wow, dude, you're so professional. Because I, like, send out, messages to people, like, here's the artwork that you're going to have. Or even beforehand, I'm like, if you have any issues, like, I'll edit it out, or we can delete the whole thing. And here's the, a list of things to keep in mind when we're doing the interview. And I told you, like, no, it's not that I'm professional. It's that I am really anxious and I drink a lot. So how I get a lot of guests on the show is that I'll be up at like 4 a.m. I would work night shifts or something like that. I'd get off and I'd start drinking. And then I just, like, had no fear about who I reached out to. I'm like, I don't care if this person rejects me or not. So one night I just messaged Locktar, and he immediately, like, within 5 seconds, messaged me back and did the podcast. But he's such an interesting guy. Aside from being one of the top Quake players, literally of all time, he's just a really cool dude, and I enjoy just kind of being his pal. I had no idea that was going to happen. A couple other ones that I'm pretty proud of. See, I Kill Pigeons was a guest on the show. He's another longtime friend of mine, and what I found interesting about him is that he does play arena shooters, but our episode was about 50% of the episode was talking about his experience in VR. Because he put on the first ever VR play in this game called Rec Room. So they, like, built a stage in the game, and they built props in the game, and then they put on The Princess Bride in the game, and then CNET covered it. Like, it's not just about arena shooters. It's about the community and the people who make it up. And some of these people are incredible, incredible people that do really awesome things. I want to highlight that. So, yeah.
So now,
Any other guests that kind of came to mind, like that you were thinking of?
no,
Like, who
none.
stands out to you?
Who stands out to me? Oh god.
Oh, he
So,
never listened to an episode of the show. He listened to his episode, and that's it. I knew it.
so the thing is, a lot of these people I don't really know them,
Yeah, yeah.
but I would probably say DB Fanos because
Oh,
how
yeah.
impressive what he did is. But
Except
yeah,
for his
but
damn airplanes that fly over his house.
yeah, it's fun.
No, he's great.
Add some atmosphere to the show. So now you were talking about your hit list. So what is the number one? Like, what is your dream interview? Like, if you could interview basically anybody, let's say that is alive, please. Like, who would it be? Who would be the person that you would want to interview the most?
Mm, it's hard to say. The first name, just if I were to say the first name that comes to mind, John Romero. Like I would like to talk with John Romero, but I don't want to talk to John Romero like, "Hello, Mr. Romero. I'm a little squeaky podcaster here, and I was hoping you might spend a few minutes answering some of my questions." I want to have a beer and talk with John, like the guy, the human being. I think that would be really interesting. Obviously, John Carmack, anybody from the old school days, I'd like to chat with them. And there's like obvious answers, like I could say Rafa, I could say I don't know, anything like that. 40 Lions would be really interesting. I'm pretty sure I could just message 40 Lions to do the show too, which I probably will at some point.
Nice.
I don't know. I just kind of like let it happen. But yeah, John Romero is one of those guys that I really think I would enjoy. I think we'd get along. I think if we had the chance to really chill out for a bit and let him get past the initial part of like being famous and getting interviewed by some other chump, we'd probably get along.
Yeah, awesome. So now, how do you prepare for your interviews? Do you make some questions? What type of research did you make about the person, or do you just go in like, I'm gonna talk with the person and see how it goes?
I try to let it happen organically. Again, I think I've said multiple times before to you how I don't even like to call it an interview sometimes, because it's just like interview feels like we're not really two people having a conversation. We're not just two people. I like to think about like if we were sitting in a bar next to each other, what would we talk about? Because it's different. People approach it differently. I'm aware right now that you have me on camera and people are going to see my face, and that's weird. But what it really comes down to is, yes, if it is someone that I'm not familiar with at all, like for instance, when I first talked to Loktar, I didn't really know anything about him other than he's a famous Quake World player and I'm a fan of him. I didn't know it. I looked up his records. I looked up, all of his wins, losses, teams that he's been a part of, everything. And then I kind of made a list of like, okay, I need to make sure that I know this requisite information. And also at the time, I wasn't super familiar with Quake World as a player. I just only ever watched it as a spectator for it. So I made sure to have a list of, when he talks about this map, I need to know what that means. And I did a lot of research for that particular episode, but a lot of times it really is just, all right, let's just sit down and have a chat. And I don't go off it like it's script. I don't take it in order. I don't say, I need to ask this question and this question and this question. I just say like, these are things I should know about this person as a requisite to talking to them. And then, I just kind of let it happen. If you say something that I find interesting and that's not what I planned on talking about, that doesn't matter. Let's go down that tangent. Or vice versa. If they want to talk about, if they specifically hear something I say and they're like, oh, let's talk about that. Cool. I'd prefer that. It feels more like I'd rather be a fly on the wall of that conversation than I would like to be a fly on the wall of like just going down a list of arbitrary questions that maybe you don't get excited about.
Oh, that's what you mean. So yeah, you seem to be to care a lot about it feeling natural and it being more of a conversation. So I'm wondering, what else do you think makes for a good interview? What else makes for a good podcast? Well, what do you also aim for in your videos?
So, first of all, it's not just a video. I need to make this clear because people don't seem to get this. It's not just on YouTube. And if you click on any of my YouTube videos, you can listen to it on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify. Like I put a lot of effort into that, and no one seems to really recognize that they can do that. But again, YouTube is more accessible. Like a lot of people use YouTube, so I get why the numbers are skewed the way they are. I guess what it comes down to, or what makes a good podcast is First of all, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like it's kind of my favorite medium of entertainment. I listen to them when I'm running, when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm just chilling out around the house. Sometimes if I'm having dinner and my wife's not home, I don't turn on TV. I just sit down at the table and put on like Joe Rogan. And what I really like about podcasts is that I use the term being a fly on the wall earlier. I like to feel like I'm getting to have a conversation with, or at least getting to be a part of a conversation with someone that I'm interested in, but I would never actually get the opportunity to talk to myself. And also just getting informed about different things. Obviously, Joe Rogan is probably like the biggest podcast in the world. I really like his show because he is genuinely a curious guy, which I said that about you too. He'll talk to anyone, even if he doesn't agree with them about things, even if he like politically vehemently disagrees with them about something. He will still have a conversation with that person. And I think that goes deeper than just podcasting. That goes down to like I think the ability for people to have conversations is what allows us to avoid wars and have fun. And that's a big thing with these different games that we play. Is that I mentioned earlier how people tend to fight and squabble and have disagreements or over, oh, I don't like this Doom port, or I don't like this game, I don't like that Quake game, I only play this one, or whatever it is, or it could get really really petty. And the whole message of the keep was like, this is a neutral area, and if you like something, talk about it. If you don't like it, don't talk about it, and we'll support whatever we can. So yeah, I think what makes my podcast, I don't know, I'm hesitant to even call it good, but
It is.
what I try to make happen is for you to be able to feel like you're learning something that you otherwise wouldn't get to know about, or that you're getting to be part of a conversation that you otherwise might not get to have. Because that's something we talked about before too, is how the podcast is almost an attempt to like, it's an excuse for me to talk to people that I otherwise wouldn't get to talk to. So I want to share that with other people who feel the same way I do.
So you've been doing your podcast for quite a while now. So one thing I'm wondering as well is, what have you learned? What are the things that really, yeah, that you would have no idea of, or that you thought was a certain way that you realized actually isn't this way? Now that you've got through all those episodes, and now that you've been doing this for so long. I mean, so long. I mean, yeah, because you've done a bunch of episodes.
Yeah. Well, it kind of happens every day. Actually, if you go back and listen to me, in the first couple of episodes, you'll hear me completely say something almost polar opposite later on. I noticed myself doing this like yesterday, actually, where originally I did not like Quake 2 at all. I didn't like Quake 2 even a little bit. Didn't want to touch it because I had tried it and I hated the timing of the weapons and how it takes forever for the railgun to fire after you actually push the shooting button. And then, through talking to different people, I'm like, you know what, man? Maybe I ought to give this game a second chance. And I did, and I like it. Another thing was Doom. Multiplayer Doom in particular, I did not realize quite how complicated Doom really is, because on the surface, especially compared to Quake, it seems like a very, very simple game. But it's not. There's so many more. There's subtle things you can do with movement, with aiming, with everything. It's almost the simplicity of Doom makes it such that it's more complicated, because the people who play it at a high level have to outthink, what you think is simple. They have to come up with new and different and inventive ways to use that small set of tools they have to be a better player and outwit their opponent and be faster, use the weapons correctly. And I learned very quickly that it's a very, very complicated player game. What else have I learned? I learned how to do audio editing. I mentioned that. I didn't have any experience whatsoever with audio editing, and still there's sometimes like I'm really kind of disappointed with the way it comes across, but overall, I think so. I learned not to give a shit what people say on Reddit pretty quickly. It's like, because people are just mean sometimes. And my biggest pet peeve is when people, they see the title of something. For instance, Doom is Dead podcast. It's Doom is Dead with a question mark, and it's the whole thing is made by people who love Doom more than anything, and it's supposed to be ironic. And then people just read the title and then they type, "This is stupid. I don't like this," or whatever. And I'm like, did you even listen to the first 5 minutes of the podcast where it's like, clearly this guy's joking, and then we're going to talk about how amazing Doom is for the rest of the time? Like that kind of stuff used to really get on my nerves, but now I don't care. I think trolls are just going to be trolls.
So another thing that you do on your channel is commentating. So you organize and you cast a bunch of tournaments. You've done it with DOS. You've done it with Open Arena. With I think you've done a tournament on Master Arena as well, if I recall correctly.
I have
Not
not actually gotten to be part of any Master Arena.
all right, not yet, but I'm sure. I'm sure
Warfork.
you will. And oh yeah, that as well. So tell me, casting, commentating, how did that come into you? Is it something that you had always envisioned, or is it something that you were like, yeah, why not do some tournaments and why not cast it myself? And then you got
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
So I started off when I was in like from the ages of 18 to 21. I was really into pro wrestling. Like I actually traveled around the southeast and being a man in tights and doing some weird pro wrestling stuff. I was a little bit bigger back then, but I lost weight on purpose because I was like unhealthily big at that point. And I don't know. I always liked guys like Jim Ross or you know, people are gonna be angry if I say this. I like Jerry the King Lawler because he's funny, not because he's a good commentator. Sports broadcasting in general, but especially pro wrestling broadcasting, because their job is not only to call the action play by play, but also to be really entertaining and to bring more excitement to an already really exciting sport.
Mhm.
So I always liked the idea of doing that. And then for State of Quake, they were putting on events, and I had come up with this idea for an event called a clan war, which would be like my team, like the Keeps team versus the Quake crew team. So Killer Duke and Killer Nukem of the Quake crew had put together their own team, and we were gonna have like a series of duelers from each different skill level, and then like some team games and all that, and it was really fun. And uh, I knew I was going to end up casting that event because no one else was going to do it. So what I did was I asked Slip the night before, because he was doing a King of the Hill. I'm like, hey, could you kind of like let me get in on this and try to practice a bit? Because at that time, State of Quake wasn't as huge as it is now. It was already growing, but it wasn't a big deal. And yeah, he didn't mind at all. He was like, of course. So that was kind of my first experience casting, was like King of the Hills for State of Quake. Did that one event, and I've always kind of been welcomed back by State of Quake, and I'll never forget that. Like they've always said, like, yeah, at any point in time, you want to come, hang out. We need a caster. Of course, you're in. And it doesn't always work out because I do shift work, and there'll be like long periods of time when I'm not available. But for instance, earlier this year, Slip had to take like a hiatus from being on the computer all the time because he was like moving and changing jobs, and he's got a family and everything. So there was nobody casting the State of Quake stuff because Slip is kind of the main man. So I kind of stepped up. It just worked out with my schedule, and every week for I don't know how long, maybe a month or so, I was just like sitting in that desk casting every State of Quake event that I could help out with, and it worked out great. And I really enjoyed doing it because, first of all, I just love Quake, and I love watching Quake. I love great Quake duelers. I don't ever want to talk about myself like I think I'm good at anything. Obviously, I'm still new to this, and there's a lot to learn. But the impression I get from people that I talk to is that, hey, you're pretty good at this. You have a knack for maybe getting better at this and doing it at a higher level, and that's encouraging, and I want to. Like, I think I'm good at talking somewhat. I don't know how I sound to other people, but I would like to get better and better at casting. And I'm really open to criticism. Like, I understand that some people, they say, oh, don't do that again or whatever, and they get upset. I really don't internalize that. Kind of the nature of my job is that I just get shit on all the time, and I don't take it personal. It is like, okay, I need to improve.
So tell me, let's talk about games. And so with casting, is there a game that you like casting the most? Is there a game mode that you like casting the most? What do you really enjoy the most as a commentator?
As a commentator, duels, of course. Get out of here. It's easier. There's two players. You just go back and forth. Done. Quake Champions is an interesting one that the round-based duels actually make casting easier. Plague TV has said this before, how it makes it more palatable to a viewer to see it in rounds, probably, than it is to just have like 15 or 10 minutes or whatever game you happen to be playing of just someone getting beat the shit out of. So the round-based duels makes it like it resets, and we see the different startup. We see people you get 3 chances to see people make an opening play. That's also interesting about Quake Champions. Over time, we've gravitated back towards the time duels with Quake, and I think that's going to be the ranked mode going forward, which I think is ultimately for the sport a better idea, but for having a palatable thing for viewers to see that have never played Quake before, I thought round based duels were really cool. I don't know. I don't like doing 3-way CTF in Doom yet because I haven't figured out how that damn game works. It's you have 3 teams of 3 to 4 people, and Doom, it makes it very difficult. You can't really tell you can't see the character carrying the flag like you can in Quake. Definitely don't like CTF in Quake Champions. Sacrifice is really fun. I got a chance to do that at QuakeCon and try to cast the State of Quake event for their Sacrifice tournament at QuakeCon. And what was fun about that was that I really am not familiar with Sacrifice, and I had to be honest about that, but kind of quickly on the fly, like learning how the game goes and in addressing your own weaknesses. So I knew I was not going to be able to say, this is the ultimate way to like strategize your run through here, but I could kind of figure out in what way can I add to this, and what way can I say what's going on. And then over time, like about halfway through the event, I'm like, okay, I really do understand this game mode now. So it's kind of putting myself on the spot. I really enjoy doing that. Open Arena, I love casting for Open Arena because of how amazing their spectator tools are and how receptive their community is to like I've on the air like been casting a tournament, and then 2 or 3 different people all message me configs. They're like, hey, this will make it better if you just enter this config in. I'm like, okay, cool. And it's like it dulls the smokes from a rocket or explosions so that it kind of makes it a little bit better looking for the viewer. This will change the lighting to be better, that kind of stuff. I really enjoy that aspect of it. Warfork, another game with excellent spectator tools. That's a big thing, man. Spec tools are important because if you ever saw the Keeps Dusk tournament, there's nothing.
I did.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's very junky. First person as well, right?
No, there's no first person spectator mode. We're waiting to do another. We will do another Doom or Dusk event, I should say, after their Steam developer kit comes out. If that happens, which hopefully it will. But I understand that it's going to continue to be, because they kind of like keep saying like, oh, in a couple weeks, and then it's been like 6 months. So I don't know. We'll see. I love Dusk. I find Dusk to be an absolutely incredible game, but I am not going to steer the camera while I cast ever again. That sucked.
No. I see what you mean. Right, so now let's talk a bit about esports. So how important is esports to you, basically? And is this something that do you really follow the esports scene of many games? Is something that it really is at heart to you? Is it more of a secondary thing? Because, for example, one thing that I noticed with State of Quake, after having listening to some of their podcasts, is that they very rarely actually talk about the Quake Champions tournaments. And you could say that, like, for most of the episodes that they did was during the period where there wasn't that many Quake Champions tournaments. But still, I feel like, from what I've seen, I feel like they're not that focused on esports. And so what about you? How important is esports to you?
How important is esports in general? Like, do I give a shit about Dota? No. I really liked Thorin's show, talking about kind of the history of CSGO esports and everything, or even early Quake stuff. I've always been a fan of the Quake esports scene, especially. It's the pinnacle of excitement. It's my football, especially Quake World, QH LAN. If anybody didn't watch that, I love that kind of stuff. I love the whole spectacle. I love the editing that goes into it. I love Jahar's casting. Andy from when he casted for it, Rotten Rose did some of it this year, especially grand finals. I love that stuff, and I love how Twitch has kind of revolutionized the way that we watch these things. So that you can, you can catch it after the effect, and you can watch it on your cell phone during a lunch break at work or whatever like that. It's not as exciting as sitting there and actually being there for it, but it's accessible, and I like that. I love Quake esports, and I always have. Do I follow the pro scene as closely as some other people? Not really, because honestly, I don't really care that much about the Quake Champions pro scene. As clearly some people do, because I just kind of have that looming cloud of doom over it. But hell, when I was at QuakeCon and I saw Kilson, break it down. By the way, Kilson, one of my favorite Quake players of all time, ever. and I actually had a dinner bet going on with East 5000, another guy from the Keep. I was like, okay, if Kilson wins, you pay for my dinner, and if like that kind of thing. And I obviously my dinner got paid for. So yeah, it was super exciting. It was one of the most fun things I ever got to witness, and I'll never take that away. And Quake Champions is a beautiful game. It's just like I don't know where the future of it goes. So that's the only thing holding me back from being super involved in that.
Well, there's some things that you think could improve the esports scene of Quake Champions.
Yeah, disseminating information, number one. If people knew where, when, and how to watch the show, and they were organized about how they distributed it, then more people would see it, and that'd be that. That was a huge problem at QuakeCon, is nobody knew what the fuck was going on. And I don't mean that as like a shit on anybody in particular. I'm just saying there was a big lapse in communication with people not understanding what they were watching, or when to watch it, or how to watch it, or what was even fucking happening. That bothered me, and a lot of other people. The other thing is, if you want Quake Champions to be successful, fix the base game. And people are always going to have like all these other things, like, oh, I want the demo modes and this and that and all the other. Just make my railgun hit the person where it's pointing at, and then fix the fundamental parts of the game first, and then we'll worry about all this other shit. But that's the sound issues, like that. Those things you got to be addressed, or else ultimately, because you could build, we could just sit here and put rose petals all over a game that fundamentally has issues with its core, and it's still going to be a rose petal covered piece of trash at the end of the day if it's not fixed. And I'm not saying Quake Champions is a piece of trash. I'm just saying you could polish a turd all you want, and it's not going to make it not a turd. And I don't mean that as Quake Champions is a turd. I just mean like there are some turds hidden within Quake Champions that we need to remove, or fix, or polish them better, or something. I don't know.
So that was one question that you asked when you got to interview me last week, was about the future of Quake Champions. And so my answer was, yeah, rather gloomy, not a very hopeful one. And I was wondering, what about you? Do you have hope for Quake Champions? Do you think Quake Champions can really pull out and be, well, the worthy successor of Quake 3 that it was always meant to be? Do you think it will fix those fundamental issues?
Nope. If I'm being honest, like I hope it. I genuinely hope it does. I hope they figure everything out. But I don't think this is the game. I think that maybe another Quake game down the line, or maybe even a game that has nothing to do with Quake, maybe the new big arena shooter. But I don't think Quake Champions is the game, and that's a combination of a lot of things that I don't need to like repeat here. But it's just the Champions part of it is interesting and cool and new, and I'm glad that we tried that experiment. I think it makes the game perpetually unbalanceable. And the fact that if you look at every other game that has all these different characters in it, they're constantly updating, and they're able to do that because they have big development teams with a lot of money backing it, and they're making money off the esports scene. Quake Champions ain't making all that much money. They have from what I understand, fairly small development team, and they can't push out content at that rate. And I don't want them to. I want them to go home and see their families once in a while instead of working, 80-hour weeks trying to get you the latest patch. Also, I just fundamentally like it better when people are on completely even ground. But that said, I am glad that we tried this experiment of Quake Champions, and I think it's a really, really cool game. It's interesting. It's fun. It was, it is the game that brought me back to arena shooters and made me like really take this seriously again and say like, hey, I'm gonna deep dive into this community. So for that, I thank them. I don't know. The lack of modability, the lack of community map making, there's a million reasons why Quake World has been around for 20 years, Doom has been around for 25 years, and Quake Champions is not going to be around in another. I just don't see it being here that long. I don't think it's going to be a 25-year career for Quake Champions.
Right. So yeah, let's talk about something a bit more hopeful. So yeah,
thank you. Please, I'm getting depressed.
The future of Arena FPS as a whole. So what are the projects? I already know your answer, I guess. But what are the projects that you're really looking out for, that you're hyping for, that you think can really be a revival of the Arena FPS genre?
Just Arena FPS or FPSs in general?
Well, let's first do Arena FPS and then FPSs in general.
obviously everybody's hyped about Diabotical. I'm pretty hyped about Warfork right now. I'm really excited about the way that this is going and the fact that it's released on Steam and new people are picking up Warsaw for the first time. Uh, got a tremendous amount of really good feedback about the first event that we did, so hopefully we do more forward. What else, man? Like Master Arena, I don't know, man. Jerem, if you're out there and you hear this, dude, I love you, but what I wanted for Master Arena is for like all the Unreal Tournament players that are frustrated to kind of pick up Master Arena and take it and make it their own because of Epic not supporting Unreal Tournament anymore. Whereas Master Arena is quite similar to Unreal Tournament, it's even built in the same engine. So I was hoping that people would take on that, and maybe he has other plans going forward. The developing team for that game have plans to kind of market it, but ultimately in North America, I haven't seen a whole lot of action with Master Arena.
So
there's always new. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, what do you think is holding back Master Arena? Because it is a really good looking game. It seems very fun, and it looks very polished as well. Seems to have all the customization that Quake players enjoy, care about. So yeah, what do you think is holding back? So quite simply, this game.
Well, there are all these new arena shooters that come out, and I think people are so accustomed to seeing them fail that they don't even click on them anymore. They're like, it isn't. It's gonna fail. Whatever. I mean, Master Arena is not the most like captivating title I've ever heard either. You know, I'll be honest about that. Like, it's a really cool game. It's beautiful. I have a great time, you know, messing around and playing in it. I think if you're an Unreal Tournament player, you're gonna have a great, freaking fantastic time playing in it. But you know, it's just like it's not like it doesn't have this giant multi-million-dollar marketing cult following, anything like that to kind of keep it pushing. I hope they figure that out, but they don't. That's okay. There's plenty of other, you know, arena shooters that have come and gone or tried and failed, and I don't know. I couldn't possibly try to name them all, but I don't know. It's a long way to the top to be like a Quake or to be like what we hope a Diabotical will be. We'll see what happens.
So yeah, we still have. I mean, I guess none of us played Diabotical. I don't know if you did. Did you get to play Diabotical? Nope. No, yeah, me neither. I mean, yeah, very few people actually have. So yeah, let's talk about this game because yeah, I talked to many people, especially some people from the Call of Duty. No, what the hell am I saying? Sorry, Quake Champions pro scene, and many of them told me that they really see this game as like the savior that will change everything, and that will be the Arena FPS we've been waiting for since Quake 3, pretty much. And do you think it can be that? Do you think it can really succeed as like pretty much bringing the Arena FPS to the mainstreams in a way that every single projects made by Arena FPS before have failed to do?
Diabotical is really interesting in that regard because it is, first of all, it looks like Overwatch. It's not gonna be gory and stuff, for what I can tell, like Quake is. So it's gonna reach a younger audience, I would assume. Kids will be able to try it out. Parents won't feel like weird about that. It's also it's kind of like if it works really well, I think it could really present the Arena FPS genre in a new way, because you know that's a fundamental problem with Quake Champions. It looks beautiful, it acts beautiful, it sounds beautiful. If it plays well, if it did play well, a lot more people would play it, because that's the number one thing that knocks people. You know, they don't want to touch it because like I have so many performance issues. So if Diabotical comes out on release and just nails that, then I think a shitload of people are going to pick it up. And it very much has potential to be a really big new esport. I don't know that arena shooters as a genre is ever going to be as big as, you know, like Rocket League or something like along those lines, but we'll see. I'm nothing would make me happier than to see that Diabotical blow up and make arena shooters like the biggest, baddest thing in the world. I'm not gonna live or die hoping for that to happen. I'm not gonna die on that hill.
So yeah, there are a few things that I'm quite, I don't know, anxious about, because I have a lot of hope for Diabotical, because I have a lot of faith in Too Good that I know he will communicate better than the community managers from Quake Champions do. I know that he's a very honest person. I know that he seems to listen to the community as well. It seems like he really knows what he's doing. It seems like the engine it's built on is very solid and allows for all the features that we would want in a Quake game. I like the fact that he doesn't mind waiting for it, even though it is a bit frustrating. I feel like, yeah, like if we compare it, so it's not really a pure Arena FPS, but Splitgate, you get to play it? Splitgate Arena Warfare?
I wasn't impressed.
Yeah. And here's the thing.
I know what you're talking about.
That is the thing. When you play the game on launch, the menu was horrible. Performances were mediocre. And yet, a lot of things about the game, the HUD, for instance, looked really bad. It was just a very unpolished game. Like, it looked good if you turned off the HUD, but the rest of the time it looked horrible. The character poses, your armors, all that looked like trash. And the game lost quite quickly, also because there was, as there often is, some problems with the playlist. And since there was a social game mode, like an unranked game mode that was quite popular that they removed to have less game mode for less queue time, but a lot of people left because they didn't want to play ranked. And recently the game had a big marketing push. We had a huge update. Like they didn't update the game for probably 3 months, I think. And then they had this big update that they were hyping for a while. They put it out with a lot of like new HUD, with new graphics, performance updates, a lot of new content, like new skins. They had battle pass. They got a bunch of. They added some unlockables, like emotes and all. I think they added some new modes. They added a new map. It was like basically a type of update that games need and that is greatly appreciated. It was a very well received update. It also changed some of the balance as well, and quite well. And the thing is, I feel like it was a bit too late. And because it's like this game should have released in that status with all this content that wasn't really there on launch, with all this polish, with this beautiful HUD, and actually good looking game. That's what it should have been. And I feel like since it arrived after the update, a lot of people were like, after the release, a lot of people were like, it's just an update. It doesn't really change what, even though it kind of does actually. And so going back to Diabotical, I feel like that is something that is a mistake that Too Good is not doing. And I think it mostly comes down to finance and to having the money to sustain yourself, because you're pretty much not making any money while you're developing the game. And it's only when you put it out to the masses that you start making that money. And so I feel like Too Good has, because the Kickstarter, because of what he does, because I don't know, but because of all that, he has the funding, I presume. I mean, it's pretty much just a guess. I don't know much about all that, but I guess he has the funding to keep on developing the game and not really making much money out of it. And so since he doesn't want to rush it, I feel like that is good. I feel like when Diabotical will come out, and I hope it will, because now I'm actually quite certain it will, even though we don't know if it's going to be in 2020 or whatever, or 2019. But when it will come out, it will be good. And that is something that really helps. And what I am... there are 3 things I'm afraid of for Diabotical. The first thing is that the game would not be free to play, which would be a huge shame. And I feel like he is aware of it. At first, he was pretty much certain he would make the game like $15 or something. And he's been talking more and more on the streams about making it free to play. And I feel like Diabotical, it's the first game in a genre by developers that have made no games before. And so they have a good following from the Arena FPS community, but the thing is, nobody really knows who, like outside of this niche community, outside of the few thousand people who really care about this and who follow the news, and by saying a few thousand, I'm being quite hopeful, nobody really knows about this, nobody really cares about this. And if I see that there's a price tag attached to it, well, some people will buy it, but like, yeah, it's not that expensive, it looks really fun, the game looks good, there's some positive reviews, but a lot of people are not going to try it because there won't be the name of this series. Like, for example, if you make a new Rainbow Six game, like people will be like, oh, it's Rainbow Six, I remember this game, I'm going to buy it. If I see Battlefield, I'm going to buy it. If they see, even if it's a new studio, like for example, I don't know, whichever DICE, whatever, if DICE makes a new game, people will go, oh, DICE, remember they gave me some good games, I'm going to buy them. But with the Too Good studio, nobody knows them. And so I feel like it would be a huge shame if the game was not free, because free play really opens the door to a lot of people and try to get. I mean, yeah, there are the problems because you need to monetize the game, and either have loot boxes, which are in many countries starting to be illegal, or you have battle pass that a lot of people hate. So it is very difficult to make money out of a free to play game. It seems like it's quite difficult. That's what I'm saying. Whereas we just have cash up front entry price is a lot easier. So I really hope it's going to be free to play. And then the second thing is with like the playlists, because as you know, what makes a good Arena FPS is having many modes. And that is what the music, like some people only care about Instagame, some people only care about Clan Arena. Now with Quake Champions, some people only care about Unholy Trinity. Like there are some fan-made modes or developers-made modes that are very popular, and that if people do not have this mode, like for example, if this game does not have freeze tag, I'm not going to play it. That's sort of a lot of people say, for example, with a bunch of game modes. And I know, for example, that if the game doesn't have an objective mode, I'm not going to play it because I like objective modes. And the thing is, so to make a good game, a good Quake-like game, you cannot have just one mode because a lot of people are going to feel left out, so you need to have many modes. And at the same time, we know that Quake players do not like playlists. Like, you remember with Quake for a while, for like 2 months, we had playlists. We had the solo playlist for Instagame and Free For All, and we had the team playlist for like, I think it was probably like Sacrifice and TDM. And people hated that. It was like on the subreddit, we had so many threads about it. Everybody was complaining about it. It was like one of the most hated changes that we've seen in the history of Quake Champions. And so it is a difficult thing because you want to have many modes, but at the same time, you don't want to have playlists. And that brings also to the third problem, in my opinion, which is the fact that Quake players really care about having a server browser. And so once again, we've got a problem because a server browser means that you get to play with people from all skill levels, that there is no matchmaking. And the thing is, Quake is a very difficult game. It's not a very welcoming game. There are many, for example, movement mechanics that are not intuitive, and there are a lot of people that if they didn't play Quake, or maybe bunny hopping servers in CS, they're not going to know it. They're going to really struggle with and not understand. So the game needs a server browser to attract those old Arena FPS players. But at the same time, it needs matchmaking to make it more welcoming for players. And I'm like, how the fuck do you have so much? So yeah, there you go. That was my very long take on Diabotical. How do you feel about it? How do you feel?
Okay, first of all, server browser must. If it doesn't have a server browser, I'm pissed. I'm not gonna buy it. No, I'm just kidding. But I prefer to have a server browser because it's just better to constantly just be able to click on this server. I joined. I can see that there's, I don't know, 8 out of 6 people. They're dueling. Here's the game mode, all that kind of thing. Sitting there waiting on a match queue is murder, and fuck that. I never want to do that again. Huge problem with Quake Champions that I just do not like. So I hope Diabotical, it looks like they're going to get that right. They've had the benefit of sitting here and watching every mistake that other games have made and constantly just kind of beating it. I don't care how long it takes them to make it, as long as when it comes out, it works. Period. Whatever. Give it to me when it's done. When you're talking about the monetary cost of it, obviously they got to pay the bills, and that's more important to me, to know that the guys that made this game put all these hours and hours of work into it are taken care of, than it is for me to get a new game or whatever. So I prefer, this is just me personally, I don't know how business works. I'm not a businessman. I prefer to just pay the money up front and never have to pay another dime and get the game completely, totally fleshed out than I ever would to get a game for free and then just sit around waiting on it to update to a place where we can play it or in that regard. I hate battle passes. I hate loot boxes. I hate everything about that whole system of making money. I understand that a lot of young people enjoy that. Just for me personally, I could give a fuck less about cosmetics. I just want the damn game to work, and I want it to be crisp and fun. So that's kind of where I stand on that issue. I don't care how they make their money. I hope they make their money, and I've supported it when Quake Champions did it because I understand they're giving this game away for free. They got to have some kind of revenue source. Some people care about cosmetics. If you want to pay for the battle pass, pay for it. If you don't want to, don't. The way I see it is like I paid my $20 for the champ pass. I feel like I've paid my dues for the game. But
yeah. So.
Whatevs. I hope Diabotical gets it right.
Yeah. So do I.
What else you got?
All right, so that was my last question. I Ran out of questions on my big paper. Anyway, so before we close this interview, do you have any shoutouts? Do you have any final words? Any stuff that you would like to say?
Yeah. I guess I will say to all of the apostles and high priests in the keep, I couldn't do any of this without them. I'm not gonna try to name everybody off by name because it just take too long. But they knew who they are. None of this stuff would be possible. Anything that you see me put out, I would not be possible without this awesome group of people who are always supportive and helping with the little things and the big things and everything in the background. Some of them don't want to be mentioned by name, and I just happen to be the scapegoat, the Motherload, and I'm out here as the, I don't know, face of the company. I don't necessarily always want to be the face of the company. I guess I am. So I'm here, taking one for the team in a lot of ways. If you're listening to the show and you've never heard of me before, or you've never heard of the Keep before, come give us a check. inthekeep.com for all the podcasts, for links to all our stuff. Get involved in our events if you want to. That's cool. And I guess I want to say thank you to Slip and Unkind of State of Quake for kind of helping me get on this journey in the first place. That's it.